Delegates, Michael, thank you for the opportunity to be in Singapore to present to you guys. And once again, I think I've got sort of the interesting session after some interesting speakers, and so I'm not going to try and bore you. But at the end of the day, regulators, and in my case as a national regulator, we still need to play a strong role in making current provisions as flexible and easy for you guys to actually operate your businesses, but while also keeping an eye on what's coming down the future pipeline to ensure that regulation actually keeps abreast of it and we can be as responsive to the regulation changes so we don't get caught out. And as Michael has indicated, it's let alone challenging to do that in one state, but when you try and marshal 6 of them, and ultimately all 8 states in Australia, you can appreciate some of the challenges that I have. So why have a national regulator? As Michael has indicated, we've been working quite closely with the industry now for some time, and this initiative to establish a national regulator was actually one that was driven by industry itself, and it varied across the industry sectors as to the reasons why, but clearly the industry, and when I talk industry, it's a collective industry, whether it's the bus industry, the heavy vehicle industry, agricultural machinery, equipment from farmers, the whole lot. The whole industry wanted to see more consistency and transparency in the way regulations are implemented to ensure that the productivity benefits that can be derived from that and the way you guys deliver them can be achieved more easily. Just some stats. 817,000 kilometres of road, 657,000 of those are actually in the local government environments, over 37,000 bridges, 18 million vehicles, approximately 95,000 articulated trucks, 330 odd thousand heavy rigid trucks. Michael might correct that figure, but ABS is telling us approximately 95,000 buses. You're looking at an asset value of $280 billion worth of network assets, $18 billion annually currently being spent, and around 70% of the domestic freight task is still done by road and will probably continue to be done so, even though we're looking at some form of modal shift in that transport space. So as a national regulator, we need to balance all of those particular issues in terms of how we deliver nationally consistent application of what is now a national law, and a law that's still currently being embedded through the various jurisdictions that I have delegated authority in. So as a regulator, we are there to ensure that we do promote that public safety outcome, that we do manage those impacts of heavy vehicle on the environment, the road infrastructure and public amenity. And that's an interesting challenge as a national regulator that's been tasked to deliver $12 billion of productivity outcomes, but dealing with state road agencies who have a depleting infrastructure budget, maintenance budget, and trying to ensure that they maximise the value of their assets, while I'm there trying to encourage higher productivity movement on that network to deliver better productivity outcomes. We're promoting that industry productivity, the efficiency through road transport of goods. This industry is a key one for us. You carry the most important packages of all, you carry people. And we're encouraging promote productive and efficient and innovative safe businesses practices. And what we're also becoming more and more evident is that a lot of that experience actually sits within the people in this room, particularly in the bus environment, in the way you've adapted and embraced some of the technology advancements that we're seeing. And as we've already heard this morning, because technology will continue to be a strong enabler for us. To date, while a lot of our energy is probably been focused on the heavy side of the industry and probably majority around our trucks and the way we needed to improve the accessibility of those heavy vehicle fleets, we still have been focusing and working closely with your industry and trying to deliver things for the industry to achieve some of the outcomes that I'd mentioned. Critically for us, a new organisational structure has now been in place, and that's allowing us to be more collaborative with the association. Our relationship with BIC at a national level is continuing to improve day by day, and our preference is to continue to work at that national level. It makes it easier for us to then start to implement those national accountabilities. That's not saying that we won't engage with the individual state associations, but as you try and deliver those consistent approaches across the country, a national perspective is important. We have started to engage significantly more with the industry, and I'm hoping Michael and his members are starting to see that we're actually starting to listen and work with you more collaboratively. We are still working in a delegated permit model, not that that really impacts this industry at the moment, but it's just a little bit of noise that I'm still needing to deliver and get out of the way so I can focus on the more important aspects of being a national regulator. We've also delivered a couple of national notices in terms of our controlled bus access for Class 2. We looked at the bus Class 3, bit of work around the 2 for 3 seating that was creating a little bit of concern. Working closely with the association, we were able to put some communication out there to actually make it more easy for industry to understand. And as you would appreciate, the areas that we play in is quite diverse, from manufacturers to third parties, to state jurisdictions, to industry associations, to 1-2 bus operators. So our level of engagement and information needs to be quite broad. We're in the process of looking at a 2-axle bus mass limit exemption. That'll probably extend also to some work we're doing around 3-axle buses as well. And we're looking at supporting the bus manufacturers and operators through PBS, performance-based standards. In particular, the work we've been doing around length, rear overhang, width and mass. And I know some of those particular dot points that you see on that screen are causing some concerns to some members or parts of the industry. But as a regulator, if we don't keep abreast of some of the technological changes that are occurring and the capabilities that are becoming available to, I suppose, governments and industry, we will be left behind. And that's probably not a position that we as regulators want to be in. Probably moving forward in terms of what we're looking to do into the future, and for us, there are a couple of priority projects where we've been working closely with BIC. The review of the 3 and 4 axle bus limits. Considerable work and activity has actually been going on with the industry in relation to this one. And we are in the process now of actually drafting the 3 axle bus limits, and we're hopefully aiming to have the 4 axle one done by 2016. That should start to improve some of the outcomes that you guys have been asking for. We firmly believe that there needs to be a much broader discussion around performance-based standards for buses, and the vexed question around widths and what we do with widths. Do we take on the challenge of a 2.55 bus? Do we stay at 2.5? What is becoming more and more evident is as the demographics of our population increases to grow, not necessarily age, we need to take some consideration of those facts. We also need to take into consideration the aspects of what some of the international abilities in terms of broader safety and productivity can afford us. I think that will be an ongoing discussion that we will have with the industry, and one that Michael and I have started to have, and one that we're looking forward to engaging with you more broadly on. More importantly, I do believe that performance-based standards does provide some significant opportunities for you guys. I have my chief engineer here, Les, who will be speaking tomorrow on some of the benefits of PBS. We're already starting to see some of those productivity benefits, and it was interesting to note that on the Victorian presentation before, that was actually a PBS bus. The national harmonisation and policy consistency, I think for all of you in the room that are working in your individual jurisdictions, is probably critical if we're going to start to see those productivity outcomes. At the moment, there is a considerable amount of inconsistency that we are constantly having to engage in to get some resolution. What we've agreed to do with Michael is to work through those that probably deliver the best bang for the buck in terms of what's available in terms of limited resources and capability, but more importantly, one that would give you guys the best outcomes. I shouldn't underestimate the challenges that actually achieving national harmonisation and the amount of work taken to do that. The benefit, I suppose, for the industry is now with a single entity as a regulator, the opportunity now does exist to have another robust discussion outside of state jurisdictions if you're not having the successes that you're seeking. Linked to that then comes probably that compliance and consistency in enforcement. We hear all the time of the inconsistencies. Trying to standardise that and getting some clarity in the way that's administered, in my view, is a significant productivity enabler, and one which would just provide more certainty in terms of the way you operate your businesses. Safety for us will continue to be probably one of our highest priorities as we start to understand how a National Heavy Vehicle Regulator can play in that space. In recent discussions that we've actually held with your association, we're looking at how the bus industry itself might look at developing its own certification scheme, and how that certification scheme might be one that we recognise into the future to allow you to potentially self-regulate. I think there's enough in terms of technology, capability, and willingness to ensure that some of those elements that in the past regulators have been concerned with can be actually mitigated to allow this industry to potentially lead in the space of industry self-certification. More work needs to be done in this space, but the dialogue to date has been quite positive, and I think there's some great opportunities to see some successful outcomes in that space. Promoting that safety culture for us is also critical. We are becoming more and more evident that the industry itself has some very strong capabilities in this area, and the way you guys actually administer your safety regimes is one that we need to capitalise on and not reinvent. The last thing we want to do is probably put in additional regimes that create more bureaucracy for you. That's going to take a considerable amount of effort and work. It'll take a considerable amount of effort and work too to convince my ministerial council that we report to of the benefits that come from a standardised approach, and how we adopt risk in the way we apply some of our provisions to ensure that we don't put those extra regulatory burdens on there. So the future for us is quite bright. There's a lot of challenges ahead for us, but what is clear that the open and collaborative approach that we've started to embrace in working with industry will ensure that we can deliver the right outcomes to ensure that your industry remains at the forefront of some of the challenges that we've heard this morning that you are going to need to address. Thank you.